Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. So Bitcoin breaking out a little bit, showing some follow through, a little bit of life. So I want to cover the charts. I want to look at Bitcoin. I'm going to follow up on a couple of the names that I mentioned in my last video. Continue to do well. So let's take a quick look at the overall market cap before we get started. Today, a lot of green on the board. Finally, seeing a little bit of life coming in. We started seeing it yesterday and really the day before. For the last few days, we've seen a handful of alts just really starting to move off the lows with some pretty good action, and so we'll cover a few of those. But you can see just across the board, very good action all around. Some big names. EOS going live today, finally reflecting some of that in the price there, up 23% on the last 24 hours. And so all around, very nice action for most names. Many names are up. The majority of the big names are in the green over the last day. So good to see some action there. Let's take a quick look at the big picture. I did mention some of this in my live stream, just a little chart I put together to reflect the 2018 performance year to date. So you can see through the close of May, we were still down 46% from the December 31st close. And this is just a little bit of by month, the type of action we've seen in May, finished down 19% from where we started, with April being the biggest single month. And so if the pattern continues, then let's see if June can be an up month for us. But we are seeing this big picture kind of equilibrium pattern, symmetrical triangle pattern form on this weekly chart. And so ultimately, that's going to be the big pattern to pay attention to here. And so you can see that's been just tightening up quite a bit. Here we are starting a green week. We've got about another day left in this green candle. So it's good to see that this lower trend line held. But the bad news is there hasn't been a lot of volume here. It's been a relatively quiet week, low volume. And we've seen that just with the price action over the last few days. I mentioned yesterday was a little bit of a no trade zone for me. And just because it's been a little choppy in here at the lows, but nonetheless, holding this lower end on this trend line, see if we can get a little bit of a rally. The test will be getting above 8,600 or so, and then approaching the next resistance on this line going into 8,900 if we continue to see some upside. And so I expect we'll see a little bit of a pullback if we get that high, and then maybe retest the low end, and then from there, we'll see where this thing decides to break out, up or down. Let's take a look at the daily chart here. So looking a little bit more near term, we're seeing some very positive action. We've cleared a little bit of near term resistance around that 8,600 level. That's been the wall for the last week and a half or so, finally edging up. If we closed here now, we've still got about 6 hours left in this daily candle, but if we closed here, this would be the first time closing above the 10 EMA on that daily chart since the attempt back here on May 20th, which was just a very brief close followed by a reversal and a rejection there at that level. And so closing above that would be positive. It's not a huge close, especially with the volume being a little light, but still the first step in trying to turn the corner here. I was pointing out a little inverted head and shoulder pattern that we saw showing up on this chart. It's a little easier to see it on this 12-hour chart, and you can see this right shoulder is just kind of a little bit rounder there. But the important thing was the neckline at the end of the day was the same. There was two levels that I was looking at. If you take the conservative view, or the more aggressive view, you can use the candle bodies there. And so the breakout point yesterday was around 75.23, 75.25, and then around that zone. And then a little bit more conservative point of view would have been using the wicks on top of the candles. Maybe a little bit hard to see on the chart there, but you can see that was lining up closer with that 7,600 level. But in any case, as we've seen typical action in Bitcoin lately, big moves up, big moves down. And so we basically blew right through both of those lines in a single shot. I had some conditional buy orders scaled up along the way that were filled. And so now we see if we can get a little bit of follow through on this little bit of a breakout that we've seen here today. Let me go to the 4-hour chart to kind of show you guys a little bit more near-term action that I'm watching and just some of the key price levels to be keeping an eye on. And so you can see this bar here, pretty good volume. I mean, it was certainly higher than the last several bars, but this was kind of a Friday night lower volume type of action, but we saw some big action there. A little bit above average, not monster volume, but still pretty good. We're seeing a little bit of a pullback here, normal retracement. very short term, I want to see this thing hold in and around that 580, or excuse me, 75.80, 75.70. That would line up with this moving average on the way down. So right now we're seeing a little bit of a bull flag on this 4-hour. Normal action, healthy consolidation, especially the volume is lighter on the way down. But we've seen this before where you get the famed Bart Simpson pattern, right? Where you get the big move up, choppy action, big move down. And it's just been very erratic here in the shorter term. And like I mentioned before, I mean, some of these moves, they tend to happen all in a very short period of time. So you can see this is the 5-minute candle. Once again, you've got 2 or 3 bars that make up the majority of that move, and then prices just kind of sit tight for a while. We've seen the same action here on the way down the last couple of days. Prices are sitting tight, and then you see the big smackdown, takes it down a couple $100 in a matter of minutes, and then it just goes flat again. So still seeing that type of action here. So you got to just be cognizant of that. That's just kind of been the nature of this market right now. But nonetheless, this pattern is breaking out. We are clearing some resistance here. I do expect, don't expect this to go up. I do expect some pullback, some back and forth along the way. But you can see we're making a series of higher lows along the way up. If this inverted head and shoulder pattern plays out, then that has a projection of just above $8,000, a technical outside projection. And that lines up pretty well with this little bit of a resistance zone back in here. And so that would make sense to see a move that is maybe pausing going into 8K. That's also a key psychological number there. So that's going to be the level I'm watching near term. If we continue to move to the upside, you can see RSI on the 4-hour still hasn't crossed that 60 mark. That to me is a key level to watch, just because one of my methods with RSI is watching the zones that it stays within. And when something continues to rally into a 60 RSI and pauses and pulls back there, tells me that it's not really a confirmed bull zone yet. And you can see we had a rally here. We've had other rallies that failed far below that 60 mark. And here we've tested that 60 several times in the last day, but we're getting really close to moving out, especially if this latest candle sees a breakout to the upside. That'd be the first time it gets above the 60 RSI on the 4-hour chart since the top back in early May. So that would be also a good secondary confirmation to watch out for. On the daily chart, you're seeing the RSI coming off the lows. Again, not super strong, still down at the 40s. Volume is a little bit light on this most recent rally. The bull case is showing a slight MACD cross, so if we continue to see upside, we're going to see that. And that was kind of expected. You were seeing these two really narrow out here. And I mentioned if we continue to go sideways and even just kind of edge up slowly, we would likely see that. It is a little bit more of a lagging indicator, but that's also confirmation that the corner is turning on this broader move down. Now on the daily chart, there is this channel that we've been in on this way down, and you can see we're testing the upper bound of that channel right now, and it's really trying to break out. So just a lot of levels to keep an eye on here. The battle at the low continues nonetheless, right? That's generally how tops and bottoms happen, right? It's pretty rare to see the big V bottom where prices just go straight down and straight up. You will see that during climactic moves lower, like we saw in early February. But when you have something that's just trending lower, very rarely is it just a straight V bottom. It's usually a little bit of a battle happens at the lows where new support is being established. And we saw that happen back in late March, early April, where we finally bottomed out. And then there was about a week and a half of just kind of choppy, big moves up, big moves down, and it was just a battle happening. We're seeing something similar here. So I'm not going to say, hey, that's the bottom, but absolutely we're seeing bottoming type of action. We're seeing the battle take place. We're seeing some good back and forth happening, some shorts starting to cover here, and the longs really starting to grow on the upside. So watching that. But the real story, not the real story, but the interesting stuff is on the alts. So we're seeing a bunch of names really starting to move higher. Let's take a look at a few. Looking at EOS. So I covered this one in my last video. I was talking about, hey, this was living below resistance. I really wanted to see it take out that line, and it sure did with a very strong action today. Here's the 4-hour chart. And look at how tight this got yesterday, and then just a lot of volume came through, blew right through resistance, and showing some very bullish action here in the near term. That daily chart just looks really good. Now we're bumping up to the next resistance level. Makes sense that it's pausing there a little bit. You know, the shorter term trading activity, taking profits there would make sense, but overall this pattern looks really good. Nice reversal to the upside. Ontology, another one I mentioned in the last video there, and I was watching this downtrend line. It did edge out with some very good volume the other day, paused here, still held, letting this moving average catch up, and we're seeing some good follow through here today. On the 4-hour chart, you can just see it's just been respecting this trend, making a series of higher lows, holding the breakout point there. It was tested several times, got some choppy action along the way, but it held that breakout point, and here we are following through. IOTA. IOTA's finally due for a pause here. It was just one of the early movers the last couple of days and has just been marching along very nicely. Seen some pretty good volume reversal near the top. It was a little bit overdone. It was definitely extended to the upside in the short run, so I do expect to see some more pausing and maybe even a little bit more retracement on IOTA before it decides if it wants to continue its run. But right now, this was just such a strong mover. If you look off the lows, the exact lows, you know, that's 36% move in just 4 or 5 days, so very strong action, and it's normal to see a little bit of a pullback. Right now, this 10 EMA on the pullback has been contained, but I expect that to finally break a little bit and see a little bit of more downside action on IOTA. First levels to be watching on this one here would be that 382 retracement level, so that puts you down around that 23.2, 23.3K Satoshi level. On the daily chart, the 10 EMA is still way down here, and so that just needs to catch up a little bit. If we pull back a little bit and do some choppy action there, that may set up another leg higher, but for now I think it's due for a pause. Cardano. This one had a very nice ascending triangle pattern that it broke out of just the other day. You can see that was the level, very clear resistance level. Once it broke out, look at the volume that came in on that breakout, just very strong action. And then here we are pausing over the last day, building a little bit of an equilibrium pattern, and now it looks like it wants to take out that next level and go higher. You can see that's the swing pivots that I was watching here with this most recent one here and this low here. Looks like it's about to clear there, and so that one's looking really good. Very nice setup on Cardano. If you go to that 4-hour chart here, clear those lines for you. You can see this pullback was just very nice, very contained here, letting this moving average catch up, starting to go flat, and here we are seeing a potential move to the upside. I want to see some volume come in here, but it's still a good secondary entry following that nice run it had. Again, Cardano was another one that was moving early on along with IOTA and had a good run already, and so this pause, this consolidation here was very healthy. Let's see if we can get another leg up on this one. And finally, Binance Coin. So a couple of things to point out. So Binance did have that big breakout a couple of days ago and has just been sitting tight here. Was a little choppy yesterday, the day around there, but what I've been watching is just this bigger picture. Technically, Binance is closing in new high ground now. You can see now there has been a higher price intraday, which we have not yet seen go higher yet. So that was on this big volume day on that spike, but on a closing basis, this is new high territory. We had that breakout a couple of days ago. Yesterday was a very quiet, kind of choppy day, a spinning candle there, just more consolidation sideways action. And here we are trying to move higher. So watching this one, but this is new high territory, and there is no more overhead resistance at this point. RSI is still only down at the sub 70 level here, and so has room to run. But once something is a new high ground, it's really hard to say how far it goes. This is just a really nice cup and handle pattern that it broke out of, and we're seeing some good action on the way up. The other thing I'll be watching here on this one is the USD pair, because that's still not at new highs and would give you a little bit more data points as to what the next resistance levels are. And right now, that first level is going to be around 1540, 1530 and around there, and then about $16. If we can get above that, then I'd start looking for a test of these prior highs around $20, $22. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Just a quick reminder, you can get more information at noteinvestor.com. You can follow me on Twitter at noteinvestor. I do offer a technical analysis course, which is an intro for those looking to read the charts, learning to get started, as well as a private group that I do maintain. This is a small group that I maintain, so I close it out once a month and just relatively small group. So if you want more information, noteinvestor.com/training is where you'll find that. Have a good weekend, everyone. Till next time, take care.